Hello YouTube. So in tonight's video, I just want to talk about in my previous video I mentioned myself reacting to complainers on the internet. I don't mean anybody complaining on my channel. I mean usually my videos don't even get any comments. Once in a while they do. But I mean that's not what I'm referring to when I say reacting to complainers on the internet. I was talking about like people who would start complaining about various things, including the high cost of living. And to be honest, it actually is really high, and I think everybody at this point would already know that. But at the same time, dwelling on something that you can't personally change is not going to make you happier. It will just make the situation worse. And even though it is true that the cost of living is very high, I'm thinking it's probably a result of scarcity. Because if you think about economics 101, supply and demand, if there's insufficient supply and too many people, in other words, too many people needing and wanting limited, scarce, depleted resources on planet Earth, unless there's something else going on. But whatever the case may be, I totally get why the high cost of living would have some people ranting and raving on the internet. I consider myself to be fortunate, not because I have a lot of money, but because I have various services that help me out, such as Section 8. I get free rent money, which I am extremely grateful for. I mean, but it begs the question, why would this service be necessary in the first place? Why is it that I can't just earn enough money to pay my own rent, which is what I would like to do? You know, the same thing with free food services, whether it's SNAP or food from a church, such as the Salvation Army, among many other churches that give away free food, or a pantry. You know, these types of services exist throughout the entire country. You know, or Medicaid, free health insurance, or I guess I should say really low cost health insurance. And then for the elderly, they get Medicare, Part A and B, etc. I'm not elderly. I'm a 30-year-old man. You gotta get these questions constantly when I get these phone calls from these scam artists saying, do you have Medicare A or B? It's like, no, I don't even qualify for it. I have Medicaid, not Medicare, but they don't seem to know the difference. Probably because they're calling from a call center in India. But, like, I completely understand why the high cost of living would have people ranting and raving on the internet, or even in person. At the same time, I don't like to dwell on things that I can't personally change, even though I'm reminded of it constantly, as are most other people, I would think. And I might have been in denial to think that it wasn't something to rant and rave about, but it's understandable why people, either online or in person, would be ranting and raving. Because, like, it's like, yeah, the high cost of living is a reality. But the good news is that wages have also been growing in recent years. So, I mean, it should eventually balance out, I would hope. And I am glad for the new presidency, the Trump 2.0, 2.0, Trump 2.0, second term. I am glad I voted for him last year. as did the majority of other voters. That's how we won. That's just how I personally believe when it comes to politics. If you disagree, that's perfectly fine. We can respectfully disagree. But this is just a continuation of myself reacting to complainers who also make videos on the internet. To be honest, they've got some valid points. In the first video, I might have made it seem as though their complaints aren't valid because America is probably the wealthiest country in the entire world, even in spite of it not being nearly as great as it once was. So then what does that say about the condition of the world overall? But like, their complaints are still valid. Because everybody knows by now that the cost of living is too high for various things. I mean, the thing is, it's like, I've lived in Wisconsin my entire life, my entire 30 years of life. And Wisconsin has always been a state that is more affordable relative to many other states, especially in the more rural parts, and the state overall is mostly rural. The only higher cost of living areas would be the bigger city areas. But like central Wisconsin, more affordable, relatively speaking, not only statewide, but nationwide. Looking at the actual data, assuming it's reliable. But I mean, it kind of just boggles my mind in a way to think that I'm living in one of the more affordable states and have been my entire life. And it's also in one of the greatest, if not the greatest, country in the entire world. But yet, I'm flat broke. I mean, I did get a job recently, so that should change pretty quickly, you know? But had it not been for Section 8, there's no doubt in my mind that I would have never been able to keep this place. Had it not been for SNAP or any other food service, there's no doubt in my mind that it wouldn't be as chunky as I am now. I'd probably be starving right about now had it not been for free food services. You know, if it hadn't been for Medicaid, which is also federally funded, then I guess I wouldn't be able to have glasses. I wouldn't be able to get my teeth checked or anything like that, or any other health related thing paid for very easily. I'm very glad that these kinds of things exist. You know, these safety nets exist for a reason. It's because if you think about it, had these safety nets not been in place, then going broke would be the equivalent of dying, if you think about it. If it hadn't been for free rent, free food, or free health insurance, going broke would be the equivalent of starving to death. But the thing is, in America, you don't need to starve to death. In America, there's an abundance of free food services. So if you're somebody who's could very well be finding yourself in a situation where you do need more food because of the high cost of food, well, then make use of these services because, like, a growing number of Americans are relying on free food because a lot of it has to do with the high cost of food. And the high cost has to do with probably a lot to do with supply and demand and potentially environmental reasons. So I guess to add on to reacting to complainers on the internet, part 2 is this video. It's like, yes, their concerns certainly are valid, but when they're acting as though their very lives are at risk, that part is an exaggeration, because there is an abundance of free food services available for those who need it, and a lot of Americans, millions and millions of Americans, do need these services. And that is tonight's video. It's 10.5 minutes so far. I'm gonna wrap this up. So have a good day or night. And thank you for watching. Bye.